Everybody has got a point, past which they cannot be pushed, and the DA certainly will not bend until it breaks, that I can assure you. The BELA Act was passed by both houses of Parliament. This is a constitutional democracy. We do have a land crisis in South Africa, and we do have deeply emotional historical issues that must be addressed. Okay, so first of all, I thrive on threats.
Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX, and today I'm extremely excited and honored to be joined by DA MP Glynnis Breytenbach on SMWX. She's a fascinating figure who has experience in the law, in the prosecuting authority, and at the highest levels of politics in South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
So I understand that you had some experiences with my father in some regional courts.
Indeed, when we were both young and I was still good looking.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he used to do the pro bono circuit in North Gauteng, what's now North Gauteng, and we used to see each other often, yes.
Wow. Did you ever defeat him in court?
He never defeated me.
Very good. We'll have to bring him on to verify this.
I doubt he'll remember.
Yeah. No, it's really great to have you. I must also tell you, my mother has been asking me to interview you because she really likes you for about a year. So I've delivered.
That's very kind. We should get out more.
I'm fascinated in your unique story to the extent that you have experience in the prosecuting authority and in politics. And it's very rare for people to see both sides of South African life. Which one is harder, being an MP or being a prosecutor?
Certainly being an MP.
Really?
No question. Prosecuting is the best job in the world, if you can do it honestly. At the time that I left the NPA, you could not do it honestly. It became very difficult to do it honestly. There was a vast amount of political interference and many other unacceptable practices going on. And I, could not. I wasn't comfortable, and so I left. But prosecuting is the best job in the world. There's no question. You can go to work every single day, specifically if you're prosecuting in the regional court, just the ordinary regional court. You can help people every single day. You can make a difference in many people's lives every single day. It's a great job.
Do you have any fond memories of prosecuting in court and feeling like you had made a difference in someone's life?
I have only fond memories of prosecuting.
What was one thing that stands out for you?
I prosecuted for 26 years. There's too many. Too many to pick one. But very satisfying job. Great job satisfaction. I don't think it can be beaten. And you can. It's a hell of a lot of work, hard work. Certainly, you have to go beyond. Also, what you're expected and what you get paid for. Yeah. But again, people are seldom in prosecuting to get rich. If you are, you're in the wrong spot. So yeah, it's a great job, and I loved it. Yeah.
It's really interesting watching your questioning in these parliamentary sessions because you obviously bring your experience of examination and cross-examination to bear. And it's actually quite an art to be able to, in the parliamentary setting, get to the heart of the matter in the time you have. Are there any tips and tricks you use to prepare for those hard-hitting questions that you ask? Well,
Parliament is not ideal for achieving that goal because of the model that they adopt. So what would be a lot better is if in a portfolio committee setting, each member would be given, say, 5 or 6 minutes to engage. What happens now is you put your questions, and so does everybody else. And then they answer them in no particular order. And you have to sort of pick out what you think is an answer to your question. And sometimes they don't get answered, and then you have to flag that and try and get it in the second round or submit it in writing or whatever. So it's not an ideal model for accountability. Where we were allowed to engage for a specific period of time, which was much more effective. Because you can pin somebody down and demand an answer, and if they're not giving it, they're exposed. But in this particular model that we use, certainly in the Democratic Alliance, we've got more than one person on the committee, fortunately. Yeah. So we have 2, sometimes 3. And we have a representative in the NCOP as well, who will also get a bite at that cherry at a later stage. And so what we do is we strategize and coordinate. And so each of us will ask questions in a fashion that hopefully will lead to accountability. Yeah.
Yeah, you've certainly done that. I think back to a number of moments in recent time where you held the state's feet to the fire. The one was the Thabo Bester moment in Parliament, where you were able to ask a series of penetrating questions to various officials there. I mean, how do you reflect back on that, and do you think there's been any true accountability for that? I mean, shocking
Absolutely
mistake.
not. So there, the chairperson of the committee, Bulelani Magwanisha, who was an outstanding chair, really outstanding chair, so fair, so objective, allowed us time to cross-examine.
Yeah.
So instead of everyone just putting their questions, we engaged one-on-one, and it worked exceptionally well. And I thought the whole committee did very well in that setting. I know I got a lot of the publicity, but I thought that everybody performed very well.
Yeah.
And they were held to account very obviously. I think we exposed what happened there. We don't have the answers yet. There's certainly more answers to be gotten. But the appetite for recalling them has diminished. So having had that interaction and having exposed how completely useless the entire setup was, and what nonsense it was they were trying to sell as the truth.
Yeah.
The appetite to recall them to Parliament appears to have waned somewhat.
It really makes one question how deep this leakage in our entire law enforcement system is, because I was seeing recently with the illegal mining situation that one of the so-called kingpins underground also got away.
Yes.
And was just let to slip away from police custody.
Well, you see, too many coincidences are exactly that, too many coincidences. So, you know, I don't believe in the tooth fairy, I don't believe in the Easter bunny, I don't believe in Father Christmas, and I don't believe in coincidences. And where something like that happens, you must look further, because there must be an explanation.
Yeah.
Just like in the Bester matter, there's an explanation, and we don't have the full explanation, but there's an explanation. You know, there was a prisoner in the cell right next to the stairs. He was moved so that Bester could be moved in there, right next to the fire escape stairs. No pun intended. You know, all of those coincidences are just not coincidences. And the mining issue is also not a coincidence.
Yeah.
There are vested interests there that we must uncover, and the fact that the kingpin was allowed to slip away in one fashion or another is also not a coincidence.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, the Guptas were allowed to leave the country, not a coincidence. Just like the Guptas haven't been brought back, also no coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Gupta extradition thing, I don't think we've fully got to the bottom of exactly how that was.
Well, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that there are very few people who actually want them back. Because if they come back and they're prosecuted successfully, that's a big if, they'll sing like canaries, we all know that. And there are many people who don't want them to sing like canaries. So do they want them back? Hell no.
Wow, I haven't thought of it from that perspective, I have to say. Well. If they ever do come back, will you please go back to the NPA and do the prosecution?
I'm not sure the NPA would be so happy to have me back.
Probably not. Another interesting moment and more recent was where you subjected the then Minister of Justice, Thembi Simelane, to some serious questioning. She was then soon moved sideways. I've seen you be very critical of this idea that she was moved just to a different ministry.
Well, she's implicated in what is serious corruption. You know, we have 68 million South Africans. Do we really need a person like that in the cabinet? Are there not others that can fill that spot? Do we need a cabinet full of corrupt people? And you know, what does that say about the ANC's approach to government? There are many people in cabinet who shouldn't be there. There are many people in cabinet who are facing serious allegations.
Yeah.
And you know, in any other society they would step down, but not here. Here they cling. Yeah. So you know, it's a disgrace. It's a slap in the face of ordinary South Africans that somebody who's facing those kinds of allegations didn't step down of her own accord. But in the face of her not doing that, just to move her to over there, a portfolio with a bigger budget, shift the problem. Let her, no, it's nonsense. It's got, perception is everything, and South Africans deserve better.
What I find bizarre is that I would have thought when the ANC got the punch to the gut that it got in this election, we would have seen people who had clung to those positions losing them. But I mean, the ANC's managed to keep hold of quite a significant chunk of cabinet, and even those implicated ministers seem to be enjoying a certain impunity even in this era.
No, they certainly do. Again, the president appoints his cabinet at his pleasure, and there's nothing that can be done about it.
Sure.
There's no pressure to be brought in that sphere. It's his privilege and his prerogative. But, when a president pays, again last night, lip service to combating crime, to combating corruption, acknowledging that organised crime is a problem, that human trafficking is a big issue, and then fills his cabinet with the calibre of people that he has filled it with, well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that he's not really serious about any of those empty promises. So, we'll have to see. Again, there are better people in the ANC. There are better people available in South Africa. And his entire cabinet doesn't have to consist of members of parliament. He can choose people from the private sector, and there are very competent people who could make a big difference. But, again, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and again, we get these mealy-mouthed statements about 10 billion from the SIU, and we're supposed to make a big song and dance.
I suppose 10 billion, if you just say 10 billion, sounds like a lot of money. Bear in mind it's rand, so it's not worth a hell of a lot. But, 10 billion in the face of what has been plundered is peanuts. It's nothing. It's pin money. We've lost hundreds of billions through corruption and organised crime. We continue to do so every day. So the SIU is doing a great job. Wonderful. They're the only unit that's actually performing. But 10 billion is nothing to write home about. And it's an insult to expect South Africans who just, continue to struggle and struggle and struggle, get poorer and poorer and poorer, to get excited about 10 billion. It's nothing.
What do you make of the GNU? I get the sense, and I don't know if you're allowed to comment on this, but even within the DA caucus, that you're still quite strong on holding the government to account, and maybe a bit skeptical. But what is your view of this decision to join forces with the ANC at the executive level?
Well, the DA's position has always been that we need to make a difference with regards to economic growth and increasing the availability of jobs. And as long as we can do that, then that's what we must and should do. So at this point, we're still able to do that. And the DA, in my view, the DA ministers in government are making a difference. They're outperforming their peers. They're clearly doing a good job. And they have made very significant contributions in a very short space of time. They've implemented DA policy within the bigger picture of what is expected in government and ANC policy. But as the years have gone by, the ANC has adopted large chunks of the DA's policy. They will never admit it or never acknowledge it, but they borrow liberally from the DA policies, and that's fine. Because, the late James Self said to me when I came to Parliament, he said, "Do you want to make a noise or do you want to make a difference?" Well, I want to make a difference. And that's the DA's approach. If people want to borrow our policies and they work, please borrow them. It doesn't matter who gets the hurrah. It matters that the lives of South Africans are improved and that South Africa has moved forward. That's what matters. That's why we're here. If that's not why you're here, well, there are other jobs to be had that you can honestly earn more money at.
Yeah.
So the GNU, I think it's a choice, and it's not an easy choice. It's the responsible choice in our view, and we've got to try and make it work. That being said, you can't be pushed past a certain point. Everybody has got a point, past which they cannot be pushed, and the DA certainly will not bend until it breaks. That I can assure you. And we will maintain our own identity. We've done that by implementing our policies in the portfolios in which we have responsible ministers, and we're seeing the difference. And I'm not suggesting that everybody in the ANC is useless, bad, or corrupt. There are people in the ANC who are not useless, bad, and corrupt. There are people who are very serious about making a difference and doing a good job. And certainly in the officialdom of government, there are many people who go to work every day and do their best. So it's not all doom and gloom. It requires a certain amount of leadership, and it requires a certain amount of commitment to policy implementation, because it's no good having wonderful policies on paper. Everything lies in the implementation. And that's what we're doing that makes the difference. Our ministers are implementing. So if we can influence the rest of government to do that, it's in the best interests of South Africa, but we must maintain our own identity. Yeah.
What do you say to those who say that the DA has already given too much? When we think of the positions in cabinet, and also on BELA, on the Expropriation Act, NHI is coming up, and we'll see where things go with that. But do you think there's merit to that suggestion that you've been too accommodating?
Again, perception is important, and there may be such a perception. It needs to be addressed, and I think that we're trying to address it. BELA, the entire act isn't a bad act. There are aspects of it that we're not wild about. We will address those in the regulations. But, the BELA Act was passed by both houses of Parliament. This is a constitutional democracy. And that was the will at that stage. We didn't have the numbers then, and we don't have the numbers now. Alone to stop legislation that we don't like.
Yeah.
It won't be the first time that we've had to find ways of dealing with legislation that we're not entirely wild about. We must implement it in the way that we can do best for the majority of South Africans. And the entire BELA isn't a bad piece of legislation. There are problematic aspects, and again, we'll deal with those in the regulations.
Yeah.
NHI, we've opposed it from the beginning. We don't believe that South Africa has the resources to implement NHI. And it's honestly no good destroying what is a reasonably strong healthcare system and dumbing it down to nothing so that everybody has access to nothing. The answer, of course, is to elevate the public healthcare system so that everybody has access to great healthcare. It's the same in education. There's no point in dumbing things down to 30% of a subject. If you had got 30% for your subjects, you would not have got your LLB. Because to know 30% of something is to not know enough.
Sure.
And so in order for... there's no point in making bad education available to everybody. You need to make good education available to everybody. You need to increase publicly available education, free education, to a level that's as good as anybody else's. And then if you want something special and you can pay for it, go do it. But everybody's entitled to a decent education. Not everybody's entitled to a crap education.
Sure.
Why would that be an ideal? It's not. So the same thing with NHI. Why would we want poor healthcare for everyone when we can in fact achieve good healthcare for everyone with just a little more effort?
I must say, one unintended consequence maybe of the DA being in the GNU is, yes, there's this criticism that you are capitulating. But another thing is happening for me where you're starting to sound a lot more reasonable and break out of the caricature of what the DA used to be. I must say, so I heard John Steenhuisen talking about the Expropriation Act, and I was like, You know what? I actually like this, John Steenhuisen. The DA is always accused of not understanding the historical injustices of South Africa's past and protecting white interests.
Sure.
But to hear a DA leader come out and say, yes, we have a land crisis in South Africa. We're dealing with it. We don't like parts of the bill, but but there are parts that we also agree with. I was like, well, maybe people have got the DA wrong rather than assuming they are capitulating to ANC policy.
We're not capitulating, in my view, to ANC policy, and I don't believe we ever will. That's just not who we are. That's not our party's identity. We're a classically liberal party. And of course, expropriation without compensation, the act now is, aspects of it are deeply concerning and problematic.
Sure.
And it's not about protecting white property interests. It's about protecting a perception, both nationally and internationally, that we have a regard for property rights and security of tenure. If we don't, who will invest? Who will buy anything in South Africa if you can't be sure that you own it? So, you know, there are issues that we need to address, but there are very few. I don't think I can think of one country in the world that doesn't have some sort of property clause that allows for expropriation, always with compensation, and this also with compensation, although what may be regarded as reasonable compensation may not be what you want, may not be a market-related value, and it could be very little or even nothing. But not an arbitrary process. Not, I don't like your face, so I'm having your house. That's really not what we're talking about. And there's not, I mean, we do have a land crisis in South Africa. And we do have deeply emotional historical issues that must be addressed. And they must be addressed. And they've got to be addressed carefully, responsibly, and with respect. And so, you know, those are things that we must, and it's no good kicking that can down the road forever. It's not comfortable. It's hard. It's hard to deal with these issues for all of us. But, you know, we're 30 years down the line in a democracy. We need to look each other in the eye and say, we can do this thing. We can find a way, but we all have to be accommodating. We all have to be willing to compromise. And make it work. Because, you know, soon I'll be dead. A little later you'll be dead. But it's no good leaving this problem for your grandchildren's grandchildren to deal with. We must deal with it now. If not us, who? If not now, when?
And what do you make of statements coming out of Washington that accuse us of confiscating land and that very bad, unspecified things are happening in South Africa?
Well, I don't know what very bad, unspecified things are happening. We're all here and we're all fine. And contrary to popular belief internationally, South Africans actually get along. We actually like each other. We're fine. You know, we're absolutely fine. We can. Somebody said to me the other day at dinner, you know, do you not live in fear? I've never been afraid in my life in South Africa. I've been afraid in other countries, but never in South Africa. Why would I be? This is my country. We're all in this together. So no, I'm not sure what they mean when they talk about unspecified dreadful things. And when people can't name a thing, I really do ignore it. It's like you know, anonymous information. Treat it with the seriousness of a butterfly. That we're going around confiscating people's land, well, that isn't true. Of course, the Act has a serious risk in that in the hands of an irresponsible government, it could be very dangerous, could be very damaging, could be very destructive. But in the hands of a government that has the best interests of South Africa and South Africans at heart, and is going to try and deal responsibly with issues both present and past, you know, the DA is taking the Act to the Constitutional Court because there are clauses that are problematic,
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with
And
that process.
and we need to challenge the constitutionality of that process, and that's what happens in a constitutional democracy, and that's fine. But again, it's not you know, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The entire act isn't a bad act. There are problematic clauses that we'd like to clarify. There are issues that we'd like some surety on of how we're going to deal with these issues in a consistent and fair fashion. So we, you know, and we think we need direction on that. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm sure other people will also be taking it to the Constitutional Court for whatever reason. But you know, again, the act was passed by both houses of Parliament. That's how democracy works.
Yeah. You rose to prominence prosecuting some very powerful and high-profile people, and you've written about how through a disciplinary process which was ultimately found to be irregular and flawed, you were basically...
No, baseless.
Sure. You were effectively removed from the NPA. How do you look back on that time, the Mdluli matter, and the way that a lot of pressure came to bear on you internally in the NPA?
Okay, so first of all, I thrive on threats. So the process really was entirely foreseeable and expected.
Oh, so you were aware it was going to happen?
Oh, totally. When I told Jiba that I would take Mkhwebe on review for withdrawing the matter, I was perfectly aware of what the consequences would be. But again, you know, the DA will not bend until it breaks. I certainly won't bend until I break. Mdluli used the covert fund of crime intelligence for his own personal bank account. And I'm not talking about the Oupa Ramokhiba matter that was poorly dealt with in my view. Just the fraud, theft, corruption issues, there was, in my view, and in the view of other very senior prosecutors, a very strong case for him to answer. And therefore he had to be prosecuted. It met all the requirements for a prosecution. There was no good reason to withdraw it. And I wasn't prepared to do that. And so when I said I would take the decision on review, I meant it. But I also knew what the consequences of that threat would be. And it's fine. And I did not feel any undue pressure or any undue hardship. I spent my entire life in the criminal justice system. I'm very comfortable there. And they had no case, and I knew it. So.
And did you feel vindicated when the whole thing effectively collapsed and you were...
Yes, very much so. But then, of course, they had the gall to prosecute me for the same thing, which took another 2 and a bit years. Again, they lost roundly. Which was, in my view, malicious. Yeah.
What do you think we need to do to get the NPA back to a place? Well, actually, I think there was a time when there was some confidence in the NPA. What do we need to do to rebuild that institution? It feels like we've had a false dawn in a way. The current NDPP, of course, explains why she thinks things have taken longer than many people expected. But what would you do to rebuild the NPA to be the institution it needs to be to fight corruption, crime in our country?
Well, the NPA was very seriously damaged in the Zuma years, very seriously damaged.
Sure.
It was the stated goal of first Simelane, then Jiba, then Abrams, to destroy it, to destroy any investigative or prosecutorial capacity that it had, for their own ends, of course, and we all know what those were. And so a culture of fear was generated in the NPA, where it was easier to keep quiet and look the other way for fear of the consequences of doing anything different. A lot of people who have a lot of experience have now either died or retired. And there's not a lot to replace it with. Because prosecuting is not something that you learn at university. You just having received your LLB, know that you can't walk into a court tomorrow and litigate.
Yeah, absolutely.
You won't know what to do. And neither did any of us. It's a job that, litigation is a job that you learn on the job by being exceptionally stupid, making very, very stupid mistakes, and hopefully learning from them. Watching other people do it better and learning from them. And unfortunately, that learning pattern has been disrupted. So there were poor appointments at the NPA for a variety of reasons, mostly to ensure that prosecution suffered, and so that luxury of learning from people who went before you was taken away. And so prosecutors now don't have the great role models that we had. And, I used to litigate against people like the previous Deputy Justice, Dikgang Moseneke. I mean, what a huge privilege that is to litigate against somebody that competent.
And you learn from
them. You learn from them. You see people in court like Semenya. You see people in court like people Unterhalter, Tringrove. You learn from them.
Sure.
And now that's not really available anymore. And so it's much harder for the current crop of prosecutors to learn great skills. And prosecuting is a lot about confidence. You need to win. And you need to win more. You need to lose too. Believe me, you need to lose. You can't only prosecute stonewall cases. But you need to win a lot more than you lose. And it's about doing bigger and better cases as you go along and building your confidence. And then, being in court is a high pressure situation. And when you're prosecuting against people who make a big noise like your father, then, if you're not confident, it becomes unnerving.
Yeah.
So you have to be confident enough to know that it doesn't matter what they say. You can do your case, you can present it and ultimately win it.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot to do with confidence, and that's got a lot to do with going to court every day and winning. So that sort of process has been interrupted. So that needs to be fixed. The NPA is a top-down organization. It needs to be led in a fashion that is not at all available for any kind of interpretation. It needs to be, you need a really strong core of people at the head of the NPA who provide a direction, say that's where we're going and that's how we're going to get there. And there's no room for argument. It's not a model that can survive by being led by consensus.
Sure.
You can't get buy-in from everybody. Everyone's employed to do a job. Do it or don't do it. If you don't want to do it, go. There are many other people looking for jobs. So I think that the NPA needs a little bit of a rejig, a lot more discipline. People arrive for work at 10 in the morning. Again, there are over 2,000 prosecutors go to work. Most of them go to work every day and do their very best under really difficult conditions. I mean, if you go and look at a court today,
yeah, absolutely,
the toilets don't work.
Oh, the state of courtrooms.
The cells are places where you cannot keep human beings. The recording machines don't work. The aircon hasn't worked for years. Most courts don't have windows that open to the outside for obvious reasons. You don't want the accused to jump out of it. So if the aircon doesn't work, there's not really any air. I was in court in Paarl the other day. It's as hot as hell in Paarl. It was 42 degrees. And no aircon, because it does work, but it makes so much noise that you can't hear anything. So it has to be off. There are no windows. And the court sits in the baking sun day after day. It's as hot as hell, and it's like a sauna.
Yeah. And then water and electricity.
And the recording machine doesn't work. They have to write everything down. People really struggle.
This is actually one of the biggest threats to the rule of law, if you ask
Totally,
me, is
totally.
just the condition of the courtroom in South Africa.
Completely. And there are no working toilets for the public, so people leave their homes at 3 or 4 in the morning to get to court in time. They spend their entire social grant on taxis to get to court. And they have to sit there sometimes the whole day. And there's no working toilet for them to use. I mean, it's not good enough. There's no way, they have no water, they have no food. They have to sit there in the heat and just sit. It's not a way to treat people. And I find it extremely worrying, and it's such a big problem that merely doing the oversight and pointing out the shortcomings isn't enough. We actually have to fix it. It's no good knowing about it. It's no good. We actually have to fix it. So the Department of Public Works has been a lot more responsive under the new minister, who happens to be a DA minister. In Welkom, a couple of weeks ago, in the cells, we found a drain. In Welkom, everything is under sewage. So Welkom has got a problem. And everything that bubbles to the surface is sewage. And in the cells, there's a drain. And out of that drain, every morning comes raw sewage.
Sure.
Somebody has to clean it. Which is not a job that really anyone should have to do. And B, the prisoners have to be kept in there. Yeah. They'll all become ill.
Yeah, it's inhumane, actually.
And one telephone call to the Minister of Public Works, it was sorted out within 2 days. So that's nice, and it can happen. But I can't phone him every day with problems.
Yeah.
We need to find a way of dealing systematically with the problems. And if you're going to keep somebody in custody, fine, if there's a good reason for it. But you can't keep them in those kind of conditions. It's inhumane.
Well, Glynnis Breytenbach, I know you have another interview to go to. Definitely won't be as good as this one, but
I'm so sorry. Probably won't be, yeah.
But it's been a joy to have you on SMWX, and all the best for your future work. And thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you, and it's been a great pleasure meeting you.
Likewise.
You're a lovely young man.
I'm still going to check if my father did actually lose to you in court, though, so I'll verify.
Constantly. You can call him now. Constantly.
Thanks so much.
But he was very young.
Okay, fair enough.
He was a bit like you.
We'll verify in the comments.
He was still a baby. Yeah.